Welcome to the channel.
Hey, everyone. I never thought I'd be the guy writing one of these, but here I am. I don't even know what I'm looking for. Advice, maybe? Validation that I'm not losing my mind? Just need to get this off my chest, I guess. I'm Jerry. I'm 56 years old. I've been married to my wife, Betsy, for almost 30 years. We have a daughter, Amy, who recently moved out for college. Up until a few months ago, I would have told you I had a solid marriage. Nothing fancy, just steady, comfortable, built on years of memories and routines. I thought Betsy and I were in that phase where we just enjoy life together, maybe travel a little, spend more time on hobbies. But lately, things have felt off. It started small. Betsy got distant, not in a dramatic way, just little things. She stopped laughing at my dumb jokes, started spending more time on her phone, and seemed irritated by things that never used to bother her. At first, I chalked it up to empty nest syndrome. Maybe she was adjusting to Amy being gone. I figured she'd come around. Then, one day, I came home early from work and overheard her and some of her friends chatting in the living room. They didn't know I was there, and I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but what I heard made my stomach drop. They were mocking their husbands, just tearing them apart, calling them boring, predictable, clueless, saying how they wished they had more excitement, how men their age were so out of touch. One of her friends laughed and said something like, "I swear, if I have to listen to Bob talk about his golf game one more time, I'm gonna walk into traffic." The rest of them burst out laughing, chiming in with their own complaints. But the worst part? One of them nudged Betsy and said, "Come on, Bets. You know exactly what I mean." And Betsy, my wife, the woman I've built my life with, just gave this little smirk. She didn't say anything, but she didn't defend me either. She just sat there, letting them talk like that. I don't know why, but that moment stuck with me. It wasn't like she outright insulted me, but something about her silence, that little smirk, felt worse. Like she agreed with them but didn't want to say it out loud. That night, I brought it up casually, just asking how her day was and if she enjoyed spending time with her friends. She shrugged and said, "Yeah, it was fine. The usual gossip, you know how it is." I wanted to push, to ask her what they were saying about their husbands, but I held back. I didn't want to sound paranoid. But that was the first crack. And once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. After that night, things started adding up. Betsy was glued to her phone more than ever, always tilting the screen away when I walked by. She started going out more, lunches with the girls, late-night book club meetings, Betsy doesn't even read, and weekend trips to clear her mind. At first, I tried to ignore it. I told myself I was overthinking things, that she just needed space after Amy moved out. Maybe she was trying to find herself again. We'd been together for so long. Maybe she just wanted to feel independent. But then, one evening, I noticed something that made my stomach sink. I was in the kitchen, grabbing a beer, when Betsy walked in from the other room. She was still on her phone, typing away with a little smirk on her face. I leaned against the counter and casually asked, "Who you talking to?" She froze. Just for a second. Then she shrugged. "Oh, just Sarah." Sarah is one of her friends from work. I had no reason to doubt her, until she quickly locked her phone and set it face down on the table. That tiny action sent my mind racing. Betsy had never been secretive with her phone before. We'd always been open with each other. I could have picked up her phone and played music or looked something up without her batting an eye. But now she was locking it like it held state secrets. I didn't say anything. I just sipped my beer and watched her, trying to act normal. But later that night, when she went to shower, I noticed she took her phone with her. She never used to do that. Something was wrong. I could feel it in my gut. And once you start suspecting something, you start noticing everything. I told myself I was being paranoid. I wanted to believe that. But when your gut tells you something's off, it's hard to ignore. A few days later, Betsy told me she was going out for dinner with Sarah and a couple of their co-workers. No big deal, right? I didn't question it, at least, not at first. But around 9 p.m., I got bored sitting at home and decided to head out to the store. As I was driving, I passed by this nice little Italian restaurant Betsy always loved. And that's when I saw her car. It wasn't parked in front. No, it was tucked away in the back, where it would be harder to see from the road. I slowed down, glancing toward the windows. And that's when I saw her, sitting at a table, leaning in close to some guy I'd never seen before. Not Sarah. Not any of her usual friends. Just him. I pulled into a spot down the street and just sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel. My heart was pounding, but my brain was trying to find excuses. Maybe it's just a work friend. Maybe I'm jumping to conclusions. Maybe this is all in my head. Then I saw her laugh. She reached across the table, touching his arm lightly, her fingers lingering for just a second too long. And he, this random guy, was eating it up. Smiling, nodding, hanging on to her every word. I felt sick. I didn't confront her. I don't know why. Maybe I was in shock. Maybe I wanted to give her a chance to tell me the truth. So I just drove home. And I waited. She got in around 11, tossing her purse on the counter like it was any other night. "How was dinner?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "Oh, it was great. Sarah and I split a bottle of wine. Just a nice girls' night," she said, without missing a beat. And that was the first real lie. Right to my face. I nodded, forcing a smile. "Glad you had fun." She kissed my cheek, went upstairs, and got ready for bed like nothing happened. I just sat there, staring at the floor, knowing my marriage was no longer what I thought it was. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her at that restaurant, leaning in, touching his arm, smiling in a way I hadn't seen in years. By morning, I had convinced myself to play it cool. Maybe I didn't have all the facts. Maybe there was still an explanation. But once you catch someone in a lie, you start seeing all the other lies that came before it. And sure enough, the next few weeks were full of them. One night, she told me she was going to Sarah's house. I casually asked, "Oh, what's the address again?" Just to see her reaction. She hesitated. Not for long, but long enough. Then she laughed nervously. "Why do you need the address? You planning to crash girls' night?" I just smiled. "Just curious." She gave me some street name. I nodded, but something about her tone felt off. So, after she left, I did something I never thought I'd do. I checked our shared phone plan. Now, before anyone calls me crazy, trust me, I hated doing it. But at that point, I had to know the truth. And surprise, surprise, she never went anywhere near that street. Instead, she had spent hours in some random part of town I didn't recognize. At that point, the doubt in my mind turned into certainty. But I wasn't going to confront her yet. No, I wanted to see just how deep this went. After checking the phone records, I decided to dig a little deeper. I wasn't proud of it, but I needed proof. Real proof. So the next time she had one of her so-called girls' nights, I waited about an hour after she left, then got in my truck and started driving. I didn't have to go far. She wasn't at Sarah's. She was at a hotel. I parked across the street and just watched. I wanted to be wrong. I wanted to see her walk out alone, maybe meeting a friend for a drink in the lobby, something innocent. But then, right in front of me, the guy from the restaurant walked up to the entrance. He glanced around like he was checking if anyone was watching, then went inside. And less than 5 minutes later, Betsy followed. I sat there, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. My ears were ringing. My chest felt tight. This was it. The confirmation. I could have stormed in there. I could have made a scene. But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I pulled out my phone and snapped a picture. Then another. And another. I wasn't going to let her gaslight me out of this one. After that, I just drove home. Sat in the dark. Waited for her to come back. She rolled in after midnight, acting like nothing happened. I forced myself to smile. "How was girls' night?" She stretched, faking a yawn. "Oh, just the usual. We talked, drank some wine. Same old stuff." I nodded, playing along. "Glad you had fun." And in that moment, I made a decision. I wasn't just going to walk away. I wasn't just going to be the guy who got cheated on and took it like a fool. She wanted to play games? Fine. I was going to play my own. After that night, something in me changed. I wasn't heartbroken anymore. I was angry. But more than that, I wanted control back. Betsy thought she was being clever, sneaking around and feeding me lies like I was some clueless idiot. She had no idea I was already 2 steps ahead. So I started planning. First, I made sure she had no reason to suspect I knew. I played the same old husband role, smiling, joking, acting normal. I even brought her flowers one night, just to watch her squirm. And she did. She hesitated before taking them, like she felt guilty. I almost laughed. Then I got to work collecting evidence. I wasn't just going to accuse her, I was going to prove it. I started small. I took screenshots of our phone records, showing her girls' nights were never where she said they were. I kept copies of our bank statements, highlighting hotel charges under her name. I even managed to find the guy's name after doing a little digging online. His social media was wide open. Turns out, he was some divorced, smooth-talking gym trainer. Typical. But the best part? I put a tracker in her car. Now, before anyone freaks out, I wasn't doing it to control her. I was doing it to catch her. And sure enough, within a week, I had everything I needed. She was meeting him regularly. Hotels, bars, even sneaking into his apartment during the day when I was at work. It wasn't just a fling. It was a full-blown affair. And that's when I decided I wasn't just going to expose her, I was going to make sure she felt what she had done. She wanted excitement? She was about to get more than she bargained for. Now that I had all the proof I needed, it was time to set the stage. I wasn't just going to confront Betsy, I was going to make her walk right into her own downfall. First, I called our daughter, Amy. I didn't tell her everything, just that her mom and I were having issues and that I needed her to come home for the weekend. I wanted Amy there because I knew Betsy wouldn't be able to play the victim if her own daughter saw the truth unfold. Then, I reached out to a divorce lawyer. I didn't file yet, but I got all my ducks in a row, our finances, our assets, even the details of our house. If Betsy thought she was going to walk away from this unscathed, she had another thing coming. Finally, I set the trap. Betsy had another one of her girls' nights planned for Friday. Perfect. That afternoon, I kissed her on the cheek before she left, just like always, and told her to have fun. She smiled, acting like nothing was wrong, and walked out the door. As soon as she was gone, I grabbed my phone and checked the tracker. Sure enough, she didn't go anywhere near Sarah's house. She went straight to his apartment. I had already suspected that was her destination, but this time I wasn't going to sit back and watch. I got in my truck and drove over. And this time, I wasn't just taking pictures from afar. I was going inside. I parked a block away from the guy's apartment and sat there for a minute, gripping the steering wheel. My heart was pounding, but not from nerves. From rage. I wasn't here to beg, plead, or ask for an explanation. I was here to end this. I got out, walked up to the building, and, just my luck, the front door was propped open with a brick. I guess some lazy tenant didn't feel like using their key fob. Either way, I took it as a sign. I stepped inside, checked the directory, and found his apartment number. Then I walked straight up and knocked. Silence. Then footsteps. Then the door cracked open, just a little. And there she was, Betsy, my wife, standing there in nothing but a bathrobe, hair damp, cheeks flushed. Her eyes went wide when she saw me. Jerry, what are you doing here?" she stammered, gripping the robe tighter around herself. I smiled. "Funny, I was about to ask you the same thing. But I already know the answer, don't I?" She looked like she was about to pass out. "Jerry, listen." Before she could finish, a voice came from inside. "Babe? Who is it?" And then he appeared. The guy. Mid-40s, in decent shape, wearing just a pair of sweatpants, looking at me like I was the pizza guy who showed up too early. Betsy whipped around, panic written all over her face. I took my phone out, held up the screen, and showed her a picture. It was from a few nights ago, her and this clown, walking into a hotel together, holding hands like a couple of teenagers sneaking around after curfew. Her face drained of color. "You lied to me," I said, my voice eerily calm. "Over and over. And you thought I wouldn't find out?" She started crying. Classic. "Jerry, it's not what it looks like." I let out a laugh. "Not what it looks like. So, what, this is just your new book club meeting?" The guy finally spoke up. "Hey, man, maybe we should all just calm down." I turned to him, still smiling. "Shut up." And he did. Real quick. Betsy was full-on sobbing now. Covering her face like that would make this all disappear. I just shook my head. "You know, I almost wanted to believe you. I really did. But now I see exactly who you are." Then I dropped the final bomb. "Amy's waiting for you at home, by the way. I invited her for the weekend. So when you're done here, maybe you can explain to your daughter why her mom is a liar and a cheater." Her sobs turned into gasps. She reached out, like she wanted to stop me. "Jerry, please." But I was already walking away. And I didn't look back. I drove home with a strange mix of emotions. Anger. Satisfaction. A little bit of sadness, maybe. But mostly relief. I wasn't stuck in the dark anymore. I had the truth, and I had the upper hand. When I pulled into the driveway, I saw Amy's car parked outside. My heart clenched a little. She had no idea what she was about to walk into. I took a deep breath and stepped inside. Amy was in the living room, curled up on the couch, scrolling through her phone. She looked up and smiled. "Hey, Dad. Where's Mom?" I swallowed hard. This was the part one dreaded the most. "She'll be home soon," I said, sitting down next to her. "Sweetheart, we need to talk." Her smile faded. "What's wrong?" I hesitated for a second. Then I told her. Not everything, but enough. I told her that I had reason to believe her mother had been unfaithful, that I caught her in a situation she couldn't explain away. Amy just stared at me, processing. Then she shook her head. "No. No way. Mom wouldn't do that." "I wish that were true," I said quietly. She sat there, gripping her phone, eyes darting back and forth like she was trying to wake herself up from a bad dream. "Does she know you know?" "Oh, she knows," I said, leaning back. "And she's on her way home now. So, I guess we'll hear what she has to say." Amy didn't say anything. She just sat there, biting her lip, waiting. And then, right on cue, we heard the car pull into the driveway. A few seconds later, the front door opened. Betsy stepped inside, looking like a mess, hair wild, face red and puffy, eyes darting between me and Amy. The room went dead silent. Amy stood up slowly. "Mom, Dad says you—" She swallowed hard. "Tell me it's not true." Betsy took a shaky breath. "Honey, But she hesitated. And that was all Amy needed. Her face twisted in anger. "Oh my God, it's true, isn't it?" Betsy reached for her, tears streaming down her face. "Amy, please." But Amy took a step back. "Don't. Just don't." Betsy turned to me, sobbing. "Jerry, please, we can talk about this." I crossed my arms. "Go ahead. Talk." She opened her mouth, but no words came out, because there was nothing she could say. And for the first time in our marriage, I saw it in her eyes. She knew she had lost. The silence in the room was suffocating. Betsy stood there, looking at Amy, then back at me, her mouth opening and closing like she was trying to come up with something, anything, to fix this. But there was nothing left to say. Amy was the first to break the silence. "How long?" she asked, her voice low and shaky. Betsy sniffled. "Sweetheart, How long, Mom?" Amy snapped, her voice cracking. Betsy flinched. She wiped at her face, then mumbled, "A few months." Amy let out a bitter laugh. "A few months? So what, Dad and I were just idiots this whole time? Just some backup plan while you ran around with, who even is he?" Betsy opened her mouth, but I answered for her. "Some gym trainer," I said, watching her face twist in guilt. "She's been sneaking around with him in hotels, his place, wherever she could lie about going." Amy turned to her mother in disgust. "God, do you even hear yourself? A gym guy? Really? What, was Dad not exciting enough for you?" Betsy sobbed harder. "It wasn't about that. I don't know, I held up a hand. "Stop. Just stop. You made your choices. Now live with them." She turned to me desperately. "Jerry, please. I love you. I love our family. It was just a mistake." I scoffed. "A mistake? A mistake is forgetting an anniversary, leaving the oven on. This was a choice. Over and over again." Amy shook her head, disgusted. "Mom, how could you do this? Dad has always been there for you. For me. You threw away everything for some random guy." Betsy was full-on sobbing now. "I never wanted to hurt you. Amy cut her off. "Well, you did. And I don't think I can ever forgive you for this." Betsy gasped like Amy had slapped her. She reached for her again, but Amy backed away. Don't talk to me right now." Betsy turned back to me, desperate. "Jerry, please. We can fix this." I looked her dead in the eyes. "There's no we anymore." And with that, I walked upstairs. I didn't need to hear any more lies. She had already done enough damage. I shut the bedroom door behind me, but I could still hear Betsy sobbing downstairs. Amy was quiet. I imagined her just sitting there, arms crossed, staring at the floor in disappointment. I sat on the edge of the bed, running my hands down my face. I had done what I needed to do. I exposed her. But now came the hard part. The part where everything really ended. A few minutes later, I heard a knock on the door. "Dad, can I come in?" "Yeah, sweetheart." Amy stepped inside and closed the door behind her. Her face was pale, her eyes red. "I still can't believe this is real." "Me neither," I admitted. She sat down next to me. "So, what happens now?" I took a deep breath. I already talked to a lawyer. I'll be filing for divorce first thing Monday morning. She nodded slowly, picking at her nails. Good. She doesn't deserve to stay here. I glanced at her. Amy, your mom is still your mom, no matter what she did to me. Amy let out a bitter laugh. No, she was my mom. The woman I saw tonight? I don't know her. That hit me hard. I wanted to tell her she'd come around, that things would settle, but the truth was, I didn't know if they ever would. Then we heard footsteps on the stairs. A soft knock. Jerry, please, can we talk? Betsy's voice was weak, almost broken. I sighed. I wasn't in the mood, but I needed to get this over with. Come in. She stepped inside, eyes swollen from crying. She looked at Amy, then at me. Can we talk alone? Amy scoffed. No. I want to hear whatever excuse you have left. Betsy flinched but nodded. She looked back at me. Jerry, I don't want this to be the end. I just stared at her. You should have thought about that before you threw everything away. I made a mistake, she whispered. No, I said, shaking my head. You made a choice. Repeatedly. And now you want to act like it was just some accident? I'm not buying it, Betsy. Her lips trembled. I love you. I let out a humorless laugh. No, you don't. You love what I provided. Stability. A home. A family. But me? If you really loved me, you wouldn't have done this. She covered her face with her hands, breaking down again. Please, Jerry. I don't want a divorce. We can fix this. Amy snapped. Oh my God, Mom, stop, she yelled, standing up. You want to fix this? You should have thought about that before you ran off with some random guy like a freaking teenager. Betsy looked at her, stunned. Amy's voice cracked. I looked up to you. I thought you and Dad were the kind of love I wanted one day. But now, I just feel stupid for ever believing in you. Betsy reached for her, tears spilling down her face. Honey, please. No, Amy snapped, stepping back. I'm done listening to you. Betsy turned back to me, desperate. Jerry, please. I took a deep breath. Get out of my room, Betsy. Her face crumbled, but she didn't argue. She just turned and walked out, sobbing. Amy sat back down beside me. We didn't speak for a long time. We just sat there, staring at the wall, letting the reality of it all sink in. Betsy didn't sleep in our bed that night. I don't know where she went. Maybe the guest room, maybe the couch. I didn't care. I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything in my head. At some point, I heard Amy moving around downstairs. Around 3 a.m., I got up and found her sitting at the kitchen table, a cup of tea in front of her, just staring blankly. Can't sleep either? I asked. She shook her head. I just keep thinking about all the times Mom told me how important trust is in a relationship. How cheating is the worst thing you could do to someone. She let out a bitter laugh. What a joke, right? I sighed, sitting down across from her. Yeah. Feels like we've been living in some fake version of our own life, doesn't it? She nodded, gripping her mug. Are you really divorcing her? First thing Monday morning, I confirmed. Amy exhaled sharply, like she'd been holding her breath. Good. We sat there in silence for a while. Then she spoke again. What happens to the house? Depends on the lawyers. But I'm not letting her take it without a fight. Amy nodded, then looked down at her tea. I don't know if I can even look at her the same way again. You don't have to decide that right now, I told her gently. She blinked rapidly, trying to hold back tears. I don't get it. We were happy, weren't we? I swallowed the lump in my throat. I thought so. She wiped her eyes and sniffled. I don't know how you're holding it together, Dad. If it were me, I think I'd lose my mind. I gave a small, sad smile. Oh, trust me. I've had my moments. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I'm proud of you. I looked at her, surprised. For what? For not letting her break you. I squeezed her hand back. I won't let her break you, either. At that moment, I realized something. Betsy had already lost. She just didn't know it yet. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of quiet knocking on the bedroom door. I already knew who it was before I even answered. Jerry, can we please talk? Betsy's voice was hoarse, like she'd been crying all night. I didn't want to talk. I didn't need to talk. But I was done hiding from this. Fine, I said, sitting up. Come in. She stepped inside, looking like a wreck, hair a mess, eyes swollen, still wearing the same clothes from the night before. She shut the door softly behind her and just stood there for a second, like she didn't know where to start. Finally, she whispered, "Do you really have to do this?" I tilted my head. Do what, Betsy? Leave you? Divorce you? Oh, I don't know. Maybe you should have thought about that before you slept with another man. She flinched, then rushed forward, sitting beside me on the bed. She reached for my hands, but I pulled away. It was a mistake, she pleaded. I swear, I never wanted to hurt you. I let out a cold laugh. A mistake is knocking over a glass of water. What you did was planned, repeated, and intentional. She shook her head rapidly. No, Jerry, you don't understand. I wasn't happy. I felt like we were just going through the motions. And he made me feel special again. I stared at her, disgusted. Oh, so that makes it okay? You felt bored in our marriage, so instead of talking to me, you ran off and acted like some 20-year-old sneaking around behind my back. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I didn't know what to do. I felt stuck. You thought I wouldn't find out, I finished for her. She covered her face with her hands, sobbing. I let her cry. I didn't feel sorry for her. Not anymore. After a minute, she looked up at me, desperate. Can't we just start over? Go to counseling? Fix this. I exhaled sharply, shaking my head. Betsy, how do you fix betrayal? How do you erase the fact that I can never trust you again? She grabbed my hand this time before I could pull away. Jerry, please. I love you. I love our family. I don't want to lose everything. That's when it hit me. She wasn't begging because she loved me. She was begging because she was afraid. Afraid of losing her comfortable life, her home, her reputation. You already lost everything the second you chose him over me, I said, standing up. She gasped, looking up at me. Jerry, don't do this. No, you did this. And now you have to live with it. I walked to the door and opened it. Pack your things. You're leaving today. She didn't move. Just sat there, shaking her head in disbelief. Where am I supposed to go? She whispered. Not my problem, I said coldly. She stared at me for a long moment, searching my face for something. Maybe a shred of forgiveness, maybe weakness. She found nothing. Finally, she stood up, wiped her face, and walked out without another word. And just like that, she was out of my room. Soon, she'd be out of my life. Betsy spent the next few hours packing. I didn't help. I didn't even go downstairs. I just stayed in my room, letting her process the mess she created. Amy, on the other hand, wasn't as quiet about it. I heard her voice through the walls, sharp and cold. Don't bother taking the pictures, Mom. You don't deserve them. Why are you even crying? You did this to yourself. I don't feel sorry for you. I feel sorry for Dad. Each sentence felt like another nail in Betsy's coffin. I finally came downstairs when I heard the sound of luggage wheels scraping against the floor. Betsy was standing by the front door, 2 suitcases beside her. Her eyes were red, her shoulders slumped. She looked at me one last time. So, this is really it? I crossed my arms. It was it the second you walked into that hotel. She bit her lip like she was holding back another wave of tears. I never meant to lose you, Jerry. I exhaled sharply, shaking my head. You didn't lose me, Betsy. You threw me away. She opened her mouth, then closed it again, like she wanted to fight back but knew she had nothing left. Amy stood behind me, arms crossed. You should go. Betsy hesitated. Then, with a shaky breath, she grabbed her suitcases and opened the door. But before she stepped out, she turned to Amy. Sweetheart, Don't. Amy cut her off. Just go. Betsy let out a broken sob. Then she walked out. I didn't watch her leave. I didn't need to. Amy shut the door behind her and locked it. Then she turned to me. Dad, are you okay? I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. Yeah, kid, I said. For the first time in a long time. I think I am. The house felt different after she left. Quieter. Lighter. Like a weight had been lifted off my chest. Amy stayed the rest of the weekend, making sure I wasn't alone. We didn't talk about Betsy much. Instead, we cooked dinner together, watched old movies, and laughed at stupid jokes. It felt normal. Like the life I should have had all along. By Monday morning, I was at the lawyer's office, filing for divorce. Betsy hadn't tried to contact me, and I hoped it stayed that way. I was done with the lies, the apologies, the begging. That chapter of my life was over. A few weeks passed. Amy went back to school, but she called every day to check on me. I started going to the gym again, focusing on myself for the first time in years. Then, one afternoon, I got a text from an unknown number. Jerry, please. Can we just talk? One last time. I stared at the message for a long moment. Then, without a second thought, I blocked the number. There was nothing left to say. Betsy had made her choice. And now, I was finally making mine. To move forward. To be happy. And to never, ever look back.
Bye.